the worst thing that can happen to a person is finding out that someone you know and love is Team Iron Man. Hey gamers, welcome back to the YouTube channel. My name is Izzy, and today we are going to be jumping into Phase 3 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We're only going to be going through half of the phase today in today's episode because Phase 3 is like twice the size of Phase 1 and Phase 2. So we're only going to be covering from Captain America Civil War to Black Panther. But yeah. If you guys are interested in, if this is like your first time on the channel, and you're interested in seeing my other reviews of Marvel movies, please feel free to check out the little playlist I have linked down below to all of the Marvel Cinematic Universe reviews I have so far. Yeah, we are on a little countdown to Doomsday at the moment because Doomsday is close at hand. To all my Lizzie McAlpine girlies out there. We're on a little countdown to Doomsday, and it's been like a rough little month for me with filming these videos, because there was a tornado in my hometown, and then I was on vacation, and then when I got back from vacation, I had those vacation blues. So, we were just getting together. Although I did start a second channel, which I'm going to link in the description box below as well. You should go check that out. There will be at least one vlog on that channel when you go over there. Yeah. If you guys love to hear people yap about art, this is the place to be. Yeah. Just a little warning before we get into this. I grew up on these movies, so if you want some super duper, like, what's the word I'm looking for? If you want some like super duper deep readings into some of these films and like not have someone who has rose-colored glasses on, this might not be the video for you. I deeply love these movies and I always will. That doesn't mean I'm not critical of them, but these are films I grew up on. So yeah. Hope you guys enjoy. I just got done with a 9-hour shift and I'm currently nursing a 7 brew caramel and white chocolate shake. So basically, let's just get into it. Alright, first things first, let's start off with Captain America Civil War. Now, I think I've told the story in one of these videos before, but a quick side tangent to tell this story. But I was in 4th grade when this movie came out, and around the same time that this movie came out, the film Batman v Superman was also coming out. And needless to say, I was young and dumb, and I was a 9-year-old, and I decided that I wanted to see Batman v Superman more because I considered myself a DC girly, which is straight up criminal. I do have a giant Superman poster on my wall, but that's besides the point. Anyways, my dad offered to take us to one of the films, and I chose. Oh, that's my cat. I chose to go to Batman v Superman and not go and see Captain America Civil War. And for the longest time, spoilers, for the longest time, this was my favorite MCU film. And one of my favorite films, period. So, yeah. My cat's trying to go into a box. Sorry, I'm back. So yeah, that's a little side tangent before we get into the review. So let's do a synopsis and kind of go over our character growth throughout this film. So I think that this film follows two characters' character growths, and that is Captain America, obviously, his name is on the film, and number two, Iron Man. I think this film is, even though this film is Captain America Civil War, this is very much like Avengers. Like Avengers 3.5 or 2.5. So, yeah. Anyways, let's get into our little plot summary and character growth analysis. So, we actually start this film with a little flashback to when Tony Stark's parents got killed. So, before we even get into this plot summary, let's just talk about where our two characters are at. First, we have Tony Stark. He very much is at this point in his life where he doesn't really want to do the superhero thing anymore. Like Pepper's trying to push him out of it, and so he just kind of wants to leave behind the superhero life, and his solution to that was Ultron, and obviously that did not go very well, if you remember Age of Ultron. So he's at this spot where he feels very responsible for the things that happened in Ultron, and he wants to leave the superhero life behind. Then we have Captain America, who kind of has the opposite problem. A thesis that I've kind of been talking about as we talk about Captain America movies is the fact that Captain America is always right. Like, he is a character that time and time again, oh my gosh, he's a character that time and time again isn't proven, doesn't really grow. His sticking to his morals and his values is what saves the day. So yeah, so that's kind of where we're at for our two main characters through this universe. So I start this film with a flashback to the death of Tony Stark's parents, and then we flash forward to Avengers and Co. on a little bit of a mission in Lagos. So Romolo, one of the evil Hydra guys from Captain America Winter Soldier, he's trying to steal this biological weapon thing, and the Avengers are trying to take it down. But while they do that, there ends up being a whole accident and such. And Wanda in particular, there she is. She is the cause of this big accident in this mission. They succeed in the mission, but lives were lost and people were injured. Okay, so Lagos happened. Then after Sokovia, the UN wasn't really happy with the Avengers and their superheroing skills because, from an outside perspective, very much the things that happened in Sokovia happened because of the Avengers. You know, that's the truth of it. If Tony Stark and Bruce Banner had never meddled, Ultron would have never been made, and then Sokovia would never have fallen out of the sky. So they are trying to sort of put back, they're trying to stop that from happening. And the events in Lagos at the beginning of this film are kind of just what they needed in order to finally push the Accords through. So the Avengers, asked by General Ross, which also, it's real rich that he's the one who's putting this in place. He wasn't trying to create super soldiers in the Incredible Hulk and trying to replicate Banner's work. Okay, buddy. He is asking the Avengers to sign these accords, and not all of them want to. Captain America firmly against it because he knows that he will choose the right thing, and he doesn't trust governments, which is something that he learned in Winter Soldier, like to not just trust the people who are giving you orders, trust your gut. He doesn't want to sign it. While Tony Stark, on the other hand, he has all this guilt. And before the Sokovia Accords, like, are brought up, we get the scene with him talking to a mother of a child who lost their life in Sokovia. And what's really wonderful about this film is that, like, there are valid arguments for both sides of this. Like, I understand where both Captain America and Iron Man are coming from in what they decided to, which side they decided to go on. So, like, that is the beautiful thing. While I am firmly Team Captain America, I also think that, like, there is reason why Team Iron Man makes the choice that they do. You know, there's reason behind that. Tony, I think honestly he doesn't want the responsibility of it anymore. He doesn't want to be a hero. It ruined, hasn't completely ruined, but it's ruining his relationship with Pepper. So yeah. Anyways, they are asked to sign the accords. Half of them do, half of them don't. All right. So then there's a big conference in Vienna that is sort of like where they are holding the signing of the accords, like this big conference. And what we are then introduced to T'Challa and his dad T'Chaka, and Black Panther's dad ends up dying because while this thing in Vienna, this conference in Vienna is happening, the UN summit gets bombed. It gets bombed, and so obviously everyone is very much up in arms about it. And it is looking like, from some like footage, it looks like Bucky, our old pal Bucky, the Winter Soldier, was the one who dang gum. What am I saying? Bucky. It looks like it was Bucky who did it. So, like, the UN decides that they're going to send a task force to find Bucky, and Steve obviously wants to go try and find him because he's his best friend and he would literally do anything for him. He wants to go and try and find him, but obviously, like, the accords aren't really legally letting him do that. So we get in this little fight scene between Bucky and the police and T'Challa and Steve trying to help him escape. And yeah, this is where they end up getting captured, and this is where, like, I'll pull up the next one. They're kind of, Steve and Falcon as well are both like on thin ice because they kind of were just doing whatever they wanted to try and help Bucky. But Bucky is imprisoned because they think he was the one who did it. And so they have this psychiatrist come in, and while Tony and Steve are arguing about the accords, the psychiatrist is talking with Bucky, and this is where we find out that this guy has been orchestrating it all, and he is trying to learn about a specific mission. And we later find out that this specific mission is about other super soldiers who Hydra made and are hidden away, still alive, but in some sort of frozen state in Siberia. He, in order to do this, has to activate the Winter Soldier, and this causes another big fight, and Steve and Falcon and Bucky they all escape, and Bucky is back to his normal self, and then like they find out about this plan. But then Iron Man and Black Widow and Black Panther, they are all trying to stop this from happening. You know, that's our scene. And so this is where Iron Man, Tony, he is able to convince Ross to let him and Team Iron Man, try and bring Bucky and Steve in. So this is where we get our fun little montage of all of our little teams collecting people. We get Tony Stark collecting Peter Parker, and then we get like Wanda and Hawkeye getting involved in all of that. So then, moving right along, we get the airport battle, which is one of the most entertaining fight scenes on the freaking planet. Yeah, it's one of my favorite fight scenes. I love it. So good. So good. So anyways, what ends up happening in this fight scene, it ends with Bucky and Steve beginning to escape to go stop Zemo, our bad guy, from like unlocking the super soldiers and using them for their own nefarious deeds, while the rest of the team sort of stays behind, which causes them to go to prison. And it is shortly after they go to prison and Steve and Bucky are off on this little side quest that it is found out by the authorities that the psychiatrist that was supposed to come in and actually evaluate Barnes was killed, and he's in Zemo's bathroom. And so all of a sudden, Tony starts thinking, oh, don't I have egg on my face? And so he goes to help Steve and Bucky. But this entire time, we have thought that Zemo's plan is to unlock these super soldiers to do his evil doing. But no. That's not the truth, because his actual goal was to lure Bucky and Steve and Tony to this place, this layer is not the right word, but this like base where these people are at, so that he could reveal that Bucky was the one that killed Tony's parents. And so his whole goal was to destroy the Avengers, it is found out. And this is how the Avengers die, because obviously Tony is really angry and wants Bucky dead, but Steve just can't let that happen. And they have this huge fight. This sort of like solidifies the tension between these two that we've felt through the entirety of the Avengers like movies up until this point. There's always been tension between Iron Man and Captain America, because Captain America believes in always doing what is right and like working together as a team, stuff like that. Whereas, and like being loyal to what you believe in and those you love. Whereas Iron Man has been more so prideful and like that are in his own self-interest, you know? Like he wants to give up being a superhero, not because not because it's what's best for the world, because we'll see in later movies that that's not true. Him being a superhero does better the world, but he doesn't think that because like it is harming his relationships and harming his life and his personal image. So that's sort of like, this leaves both of them sort of wounded and bruised and very ready for the next time we see these two that like actually mean something, because we see Iron Man before Infinity War. But yeah, anyways, that is the little plot summary of Captain America Civil War and our little deep dive into the character growth. So let's move on to my review. So I rated this film 5 stars. Like I said, it was my favorite for a very long time, until another film came around. My little review was the worst thing that can happen to a person is finding out that someone you know and love is Team Iron Man, which is a little dramatic because, as I said in my review, like I think there's merits and reasons behind both teams. But yeah, I just think it's a really well crafted film. My dad disagrees with me, but that's okay. We're allowed to have different opinions. I can get over it. From my understanding, this is not very comic accurate film, but you know what? It's an adaptation. My brother always says it's an adaptation, not a, what is the word? A remake. It's an adaptation, not a remake. So yeah, let's move on to our next film. Okay, we are now moving on to Doctor Strange. So obviously we're going to be following the character of Doctor Strange. I mean, it's in the title. Okay, first things first. So we meet our titular character of Doctor Strange. He is I think, neurosurgeon. Don't quote me on that one. He does surgery on the brain. I'm pretty sure. He does surgery on the brain. Where was the train of thought going? He does surgery on the brain. He's the best in his field. And he is, how to describe him? He's very prideful and he's very antagonistic. And those two elements are sort of two weaknesses that he is going to have to overcome. He's prideful, antagonistic, and I would say he's overly ambitious at points. He thinks that he's above the rules, I guess, is a better way of putting it than overly ambitious. Thinks he's above the rules. So that's our lead character in this. And at the very beginning, sort of playing into this idea of he thinks he's above the rules, he gets into a car. He is driving to a fancy work event, a little gala celebrating him. And while he's doing that, he is texting and driving, and not paying attention and speeding, and ends up in a car crash. And guess what? He has terrible neural damage, and cannot use his hands very well. He can still use them, but just not very well. And this ruins him because you know what brain surgeons need? They need to be able to use their hands. And so basically, Steven is torn up because his entire career and his entire livelihood and his entire self-worth is embedded within his ability to be a spectacular brain surgeon. And so he sort of tears his life apart after this happens. He spends all of his money trying to find cures that just don't help. He is terrible to the people in his life, which is mainly just one person because he wasn't a great person to begin with. Rachel McAdams' character, Christine. Yeah. So that's where he's at. And he's so desperate that he, in fact, decides he's going to spend the last of his savings and go to Nepal to a place called the Kamatage. Because his physical therapist basically alluded that this guy, came back from, waist down paralyzation. I think there's a specific term for that. But he came back from waist down paralyzation because he went to the Kamatage. So Doctor Strange, he's like, I'm gonna go check this out. I want to see if this is for reals. So he does. And while he's there, when he first goes there, he kind of doesn't believe in it because it's magic. Spoiler alert, it's magic. That's the thing that is sort of that's the thing they deal in. They don't really deal in science, they deal in magic. He gets to the Kamatage and he's kind of thrown out because he's sassy to the Ancient One and doesn't really believe it at all. But then he's just kind of but please, I spent all my money to get here. And the ancient one agrees to teach him. And it's kind of a rocky start. He still doesn't have great control over his hands, so he believes that he's not able to really do it, even though he totally can. And so he has to be pushed to the brink of death. But once he starts doing it, he takes off because he's a high achiever. He's a doctor. He's a doctor. So obviously, high achiever. He does great. And he ends up like reading a bunch of books, and then he wants to start reading some forbidden books because, again, he sort of thinks he's above the rules, which is, I would say, one of his biggest character flaws. And Loki he doesn't really learn. He doesn't really learn from this. Because on the flip side of Doctor Strange, we have another character that very much mirrors him named Mordu. I don't remember, honestly. I just remember seeing it written earlier when I was making the presentation, and it's spelt like Mordu from Brave, I'm pretty sure. It also could not be. I'm pretty dyslexic, but Mordu, question mark, question mark, question mark. So Mordu, on the flip side to Doctor Strange, is very much the antithesis of the rule follower. He sticks to the rules because that's what gives them their power. And so we sort of like see the ways that like sort of how, I guess, like the meaning you could find behind this film is that like you can't be a total ditch the rules and think you're above the rules, even if you're really good, but you also can't be a super strict follower of the rules and not understand nuance, and the nuance that might be behind certain rules. I think that message could have been delivered a little bit better if Strange had sort of more obviously developed into someone who follows the rules a bit better. I think he does on some level, but it's not in a super huge showy way, which I guess maybe that's like small small dumb brain needs big show of a theme in order to like get it and can't like dig in to it. But I don't know. That's personal opinion. You can debate me in the comments. Anyways, so he gets better at it, and while he's messing around with the Eye of Agamemnon, that's not how you pronounce it. While he's messing around with that, while he's messing around with that and breaking the rules and stuff, Calisius, our bad guy, who is in cahoots with Dormammu, I like that word, Dormammu, in cahoots with Dormammu, comes to try and take down the Sanctum. And obviously, the New York Sanctum. And obviously, Doctor Strange is like, no. And they fight. And Doctor Strange ends up getting hurt. He ends up getting hurt, and it's sort of this like first like show of strength on his part and like how he's kind of like come along within this. He defeats, I shouldn't say defeats, he stops Calisius and co from destroying the New York Sanctum. He gets injured, and so then Stephen does what all he can think to do with when he's injured. He goes and finds Christine and asks her to help him. And that's when we get like there's also this other super cool fight scene where they're like ghosts and they're like fighting each other. But yeah. Anyways, he reconnects with Christine, and there's like sort of this like moment of like how he's changed, and so after this happens, Clesius and co come back to destroy the New York Sanctum, and this is when it is revealed that the Ancient One, in order to stay young, has been stealing power from the Dark Dimension, which is a big no-no, and basically what the bad guys have been doing, she ends up dying, and Mordu doesn't believe in her anymore, and the New York Sanctum is destroyed. So L's all around, but we find out that Doctor Strange is the one that, when the chosen one of sorts. Which again, I feel like it could have been better if he wasn't the chosen one and he just sort of came around. But at the same time, I guess she knows that he's the one because of time travel, so she would have known either way. But whatever. Anyways, she dies. Yeah, and then come to find out, the Hong Kong Sanctum has been destroyed. Our homie Wong destroyed, and this is when we get our ending of the film, where Doctor Strange sort of goes back in time, and then he goes back to defeat Dormammu and such and such and such. So he kind of breaks the rules in order to do this, because you're not really supposed to be messing around with time, even though the Ancient One has been doing it this entire time. My thoughts for this movie are a little all over the place, mostly because I don't really like this movie, and it does not stick out in my brain. It does not stick out. So I'm sorry if I'm a little crazy at the moment. Yeah, so Doctor Strange ended up going back in time to before the Hong Kong Sanctum was destroyed, and then he even goes to Dormammu's dimension and puts Dormammu in a time loop, which makes Dormammu it causes Dormammu to bargain with Doctor Strange to get back, to back off of Earth and such and such. Okay, let's go over this one more time to sort of we go from prideful, above the rule, thinks he's above the rule guy, to has the consequences of breaking rules, to someone who kind of gets himself back up on his feet again, becomes a good sorcerer, continues to break rules, sees sort of the consequences of breaking rules, the Ancient One. She sort of loses the trust of her followers and ends up dying. So, there's the consequences of the rules, and then Doctor Strange still continues to break the rules, but it is in order to save people. That's why he breaks the rules. Okay, that's kind of my reading of it. So let's get into my review. I rated this film 3 stars. And my review was, every time someone said Dormammu, all I could think of was Dormammu so fat, from that one clip of the Infinity War press tour. They were doing trivia, and Chris Pratt says Dormammu so fat. Anyways, why I think this one is a little bit on the lower end is because I just think that Doctor Strange is I think all the problems fall back to Doctor Strange kind of feeling like a knockoff of Tony Stark. They tried to make him a little too much like Tony Stark, even though he's Doctor Strange and he should be his own person and have his own vibe, I think there's a lot of moments in this film where they try to be funny, and it just doesn't really land because there's a very serious tone to this film, but then they have jokes about Beyonce and stuff like that, and you just kind of get thrown out of it. I think also a lot of the problems with Doctor Strange's overall arc is that he's just too similar to Tony Stark. I think that they lean a little bit more into the rule following aspect, as opposed to, oh my gosh, Kat, what the sus are you doing? Before as I was saying before, I think it's a little bit like I feel like if they had just like gone with this idea of like, if they had cut out the pridefulness aspect and leaned more into like the thinking, Doctor Strange's like thought that he's above the rules, I think that could have made this film better. You know, I think it could have made it a little bit more cohesive. His storyline would have felt more finished and better. Uh, yeah, that's my thoughts on Doctor Strange. Let's get into the next movie. Okay, I need to be less long-winded because my phone is dying as we speak. Okay, let's move on to the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. All right, as we do with these group films, so films about a group of people instead of one singular superhero, we are analyzing the group dynamic and how that grows over the course of the film. Okay, so this family sort of came together in the midst of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1, and we're sort of seeing what's going on after. Like, how is this found family functioning? I think Guardians of the Galaxy does a really good job of utilizing humor and character interaction with each other in order to show the way that the relationships are portrayed instead of telling us. You know, I think it does a really good job of that. Yeah, so we start this film with the Guardians of the Galaxy sort of protecting these batteries for these people called the Sovereign from this little monster guy. This is sort of like their first little mission together post defeating the villain from the first movie. I can't remember his name. Ronan, defeating Ronan. So they defeat the little guy, this monster thing, save the batteries. They're thanked for it, and while they're getting thanked, we find that Rocket stole the batteries. These people are supposed to be saving the universe. That's their job, and Rocket, the raccoon, is stealing them. Him and Quill are really the ones that I think grow the most obviously over the course of these films, or at least the last two films. So yeah. So they steal the batteries, and what ends up happening is the Sovereign find out almost immediately, and they try and go get their batteries back. And the Guardians of the Galaxy get into an argument about it. They don't understand why Rocket would do that, but Rocket, like, he is constantly saying like he did this for them. I don't know why, but he's constantly saying, I did this for you guys. I think that's better. I did this for you guys. I don't know why you're so angry. Yeah. Lot of yelling, and the Guardians don't really understand why Rocket would steal batteries. There is a reason. Yeah. This is when as they're getting attacked by the Sovereign, Peter Quill's dad swoops in. We don't know he's Peter Quill's dad yet. Swoops in and saves the day. And everyone is like, oh my gosh, who is this savior guy? And yeah, it's Peter's dad. Yeah. So then Peter's dad wants to take him back to his sort of home planet so that they can like grow closer and get to know each other. But their ship also fell apart during their little Sovereign excursion. So the group splits up. Also because they're like mad at each other. Rocket is upset that like nobody understands. Like everyone's blaming him for this battery situation. He was just trying to keep the batteries he was just trying to do something for the group, and Peter and Gamora and stuff, they don't understand why he would have done that. Like, he's just putting them in danger. Okay, so they split up. Rocket and co ends up getting captured by the Ravagers because the Sovereign, they try to like recruit the Ravagers to collect the Guardians of the Galaxy and bring them back to them. While this is happening, Yondu, who in charge of the Ravagers, he doesn't want to send them back. Like, they catch them, but he doesn't want to turn them in for the money. And this causes a little mutiny, which causes Rocket and Groot and Yondu to all get captured by the mutiny. And yeah, so basically they're cooked. Okay, while all of this is happening, Peter is growing closer to his father. And we also see Peter sort of yearn for connection with the other Guardians. Specifically, he yearns for connection with Gamora, who is this girl he really likes and still seems to be very, like, sheltered and doesn't want to, like, give into her feelings, and this makes him angry. Which is kind of, like, low-key not a great move, because, like, if she's not ready for a relationship, why are you trying to push her? That's all I'm saying. But with this, like, tension between him and Gamora, and his already being mad at Rocket, it makes it very easy for his dad to, like, swoop in and sort of, like play this card of, like, oh, you've always wanted family, you're a kid who's never had dad and whose mom died when you were really young, and grew up with around a bunch of aliens. Like, I am the dad you've always wanted, I can be anything you really want. He very much preys on that. And so while all of that is happening, the Ravagers are, in fact, they're having their little mutiny moment, and of course, Yondu and Rocket and Groot, they break free, and they end up legitimately killing all of the Ravagers who mutinied, except for Kraglin, because he joins their side in the end. Yeah, so it is also revealed at this point that Yondu had been working for Ego and sending all of his sons to his planet. And the reason he didn't send Peter to his planet was because he, like, found out what he was doing with the sons and did not agree with it. So he was killing all of them, basically. So Mantis and Drax and Gamora are kind of figuring out that Peter's dad's not a great guy. And so we have, like, this moment where the two are talking, and Peter is totally falling for this little manipulation, and he's falling for the manipulation up until his dad reveals that he killed his mother, and then he snaps out of it and realizes that his dad's a bad person. And then we get our final battle scene where they battle his dad, and they sort of come together as a group, and they realize that, like, they're all imperfect people who have had a really hard time with family, and all of their actions are motivated behind trying to do good for each other. And, like, Rocket needs to be more careful about, like, what he is doing, and Peter needs to see Rocket for what he's truly doing, you know? So yeah, that's sort of how it grows. I've rated this film 5 stars. I think this film was so good. This was my favorite Guardians movie growing up. Like, I just loved this film. And my review was, you know how in Pitch Perfect, Jesse was inspired by the sound of track of The Breakfast Club to work in film? This movie was my Breakfast Club. Yeah. This film, I just love this idea. Like, I love how the found family trope, like, is expanded upon in this film, and how, like, it shows the, like, growing pains, as I've been saying, of, like, being a bunch of people who are broken coming together to make their own family. and sort of how that would create conflict. Yeah, so that is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Let's move on to the next film. Okay, let's move on to Spider-Man Homecoming. I think Spider-Man's always been a really interesting character, I feel like, because he deals with that like superhero teenage superhero and balance very well. Let's get into it. Peter Parker is coming off of just helping Iron Man in Berlin fight Captain America. He's on a superheroing high, you know? He wants nothing more than to continue to superhero and make Tony Stark proud. We start this film with him and Tony sort of having a moment before he gets dropped back off from Berlin. And basically Tony telling him to continue superheroing, which is a little weird considering the fact that he's a minor and he's like 15. Told him to keep superheroing and like to let Happy know of anything that happens. So 2 months go by and Peter Parker is basically back to normal life. He's superheroing at night, but it's not very eventful. But during the day, he is just a normal high school kid. And he sort of like deals with this like wanting so badly to be this big like superhero like Iron Man, while still being a teenager who should finish high school. Yeah. And we also see like he does want some aspect of that high school experience because he wants to get the girl. He wants to be popular, you know? There is that aspect of like the conflict starting to brew in this beginning. So he desperately likes this girl named Liz, and Liz thinks that Spider-Man is the coolest superhero. So his friend Ned, his guy in the chair, lets it slip that Peter Parker knows Spider-Man. And so then Spider-Man is now supposed to show up at a house party in the suburbs. Yeah. And Peter doesn't really want to do this because like he knows that like Spider-Man's not a hat trick, and I think he also very much like deep down wants division between like his superhero stuff and like his teenage life because he wants I need to not have the necklace dangling by the mic. He wants both so badly, but he also knows that he needs to keep both separate in order to do it successfully, you know? So like he doesn't really want to use it as a hat trick, but basically he's about to pull up to this party to impress this girl that he likes when he sees some criminal activity going down, a weapons deal going down, and he stops it. What ends up happening is he figures out where these people are getting their weapons from and like stops them from getting weapons this time. And then because of that, he sort of gets like trapped in where all these weapons are from. And then he misses the academic decathlon, and then he finds out that there's this little thing that they've been carrying around that they got from one of the weapons. That's actually a bomb. And so when they go to the Washington Monument, it sets it off. And so then Peter Parker saves his friends, but Peter Parker has been nowhere to be seen. So even though it was like successful, it was a success for Spider-Man, this little trip, it was a failure for Peter Parker because he ends up getting put in detention when he gets back from the field trip because Home Slice was nowhere to be seen during the field trip. But he ends up deciding that he's too good for detention and that he does not need that because he is Spider-Man. So he is going to skip detention and try and go stop another weapons deal. But that ends up going really badly, and Iron Man has to save him, and Iron Man then takes the suit away from him. Now, Iron Man being in this movie is a very contentious topic, I would say. Personally, okay, he needs to be in the film for the plot that they created. I just wish he didn't have to be in the film, you know? I wish there could have just been this looming idea of impressing Mr. Stark, as Peter calls him, instead of him actually being there. Because I think it would have been cool if we didn't see Tony until Infinity War after Civil War, but nonetheless, here we are. I think it has to be in the plot and it helps Peter grow Tony's part. It's just also kind of I find him to be so annoying. I find Tony to be so annoying in this film, which is something that I don't think normally happens whenever I see Tony, I see Iron Man in a film, but he is annoying in this film. Yeah. Yeah. So anyways, he takes the suit away from him because he feels like he is focusing more on being a superhero than being a teenager, and he's getting way too deep into it. And remember, also Tony is battling with wanting to be a superhero. He's battling that within himself. So yeah. He takes the suit away from him and tells him that if he's nothing without the suit, then did he ever really deserve the suit? So then we get into sad Peter Parker. He's in detention. He's no longer Spider-Manning. His life has kind of fallen apart because he was putting all of his and drive into being Spider-Man instead of being a normal kid. Even though he still has a crush on this girl and stuff. But yeah. So anyways, by some weird luck and the fact that Tom Holland is attractive, he ends up asking his crush Liz out to the homecoming dance, and she says yes. And so they go together to the dance. And when Peter goes to pick up Liz, he finds out that Liz, her dad, happens to be the bad guy that they have been fighting this entire film. Yes, yes, yes. So Peter's he's a little shocked, and he's a little upsetty spaghetti because what do you mean? What do you mean? That's this entire time the guy we've been trying to destroy is my crush's dad. And so Peter and the Vulture, our bad guy, they talk before going to the dance, just him and Peter. And Peter is offered up this option. He is given the option of staying and staying at the dance and leaving behind the Spider-Man thing and letting Adrian break the law and steal from Tony Stark, or he can be Spider-Man and die. And yeah, those are his options. And so Peter is really faced with this because this entire film he has wanted to be with Liz. He has wanted to be with Liz, and Liz, I think, represents his want to be a normal teenager. To that part of him that doesn't really want the responsibility of being a superhero, but that's been at war with this feeling of validation he gets from being Spider-Man and being with Tony Stark. And so he sort of is given this choice: do I be the superhero and use the powers as I should, or do I be a normal teenager? And he ends up deciding to save the day because that's the right thing to do. Saves the day, and then Tony Stark comes and finds him, and he is again offered up this choice between being a normal teenager and being a superhero. This time, he chooses being a normal teenager because the fate of the world is not on the line. So he shouldn't have to. He wants to still have that regular teenage life. And so, given the choice and not having the responsibility to not having the responsibility of being the person with the powers to save the day, he, like, not having that obligation, he chooses to have the normal life. He declines being part of the Avengers, and yeah. So, what is my rating of this film? I rated this film 4 stars. Like I said, I think that Iron Man being a heavy presence within this film is a weak point. I understand that, like, a lot of the plot revolves around him being there, and I just wish he wasn't as present in it, if that makes sense. Like, I think Peter still could have, like, dealt with the, like, wanting that validation he feels from, like, being a superhero, and Tony Stark's, like, appreciation of him without Tony being as present. And I think that would have been almost more. It would have been more compelling if he wasn't, like, actually there, you know. So yeah. My review is, it has taken me 9 years to realize that the reason it's called Spider-Man Homecoming is because the climax happens during Homecoming. I think this is a good film. I really like the idea of, like, battling between, like, wanting to be a normal person and wanting to wanting to be a normal teenager and wanting to be a superhero and feeling the obligation and validation in being a superhero, but also being like, I'm 15 years old, and yeah. I think that's really cool. I wish Tony Stark hadn't been in it. I think it would have been more compelling that way. Yeah, those are my thoughts on Spider-Man. Let's move on to the next film. All right, now moving along to Thor Ragnarok. Thor Ragnarok is a very interesting movie because it happens to be the only good Thor movie. Now, as y'all know, I love the MCU movies a lot, even if they're bad. But the Thor films in particular just, like, have never really fully landed. The first Thor I rated 3 stars. The second Thor I rated 2.5. And this one magically gets a 4.5 stars. Somehow. So let's talk. So, like, when we talk about Thor's growth, it's really interesting. Oh my gosh, my cat is trying to break into my food. When we talk about Thor's character growth, we really don't really, at this point in the MCU, have anything to really build like up off of, because, like, with Captain America and Iron Man, they have had these overarching arcs through their movies and through the Avengers films that have, like, sort of been adding to why their later films are so good, whereas Thor doesn't really have that, you know. Like, I couldn't really tell you off the top of my dome what his arcs were in the previous films, you know. I definitely have to go rewatch them, which is crazy considering I probably watched them 2 months ago. Anyways, so I think my theory is that Thor's arc is about, like, accepting the role of king. And I think that we've kind of been all over the place with this, with him really wanting to be king in Thor, and then him giving up the ability to be king. It's been kind of all over the place. But I think that, given that Taika Waititi, the director, which I love Taika Waititi's movie Jojo Rabbit. I just want to shout out Jojo Rabbit because it's a really good movie. Anyways, so I think that this arc is about him discovering, like, that him being king is his purpose and is what is best for Asgard, you know? Okay, so we start this film off with Thor trying his darndest to stop Ragnarok from happening. And he does this through going to this fire guy, Sator, I think. Let me check my Magnus Chase books, see what his name is. We can figure it out from the we can figure it out via Magnus Chase book. There's always a glossary in the back. Sator, I think it's Sator. Cert. That's the guy. Thank you, Magnus Chase. So Cert is he goes and he like vanquishes Cert and like prevents him from ever being able to like prevents Ragnarok from ever happening. That's how we start this. He's kind of been on this little journey trying to find Infinity Stones and kind of put the world back together since we saw him last in Age of Ultron. So then Thor returns home to Asgard for the first time, and instantly something is amiss. Heimdall was fired, and Odin just really isn't like he used to be. And so, surprise, 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 but Odin is actually Loki. Loki is posing as Odin to be king. Thor figures out immediately, and he's like, Loki, let's go find our dad. And he's also PO'd because he thought that Loki died and was very sad about that. They search for Odin and can't find him, and then for some reason Doctor Strange is in this freaking movie. That's part of why this film isn't like a 5-star for me, is because for some reason Doctor Strange had to be in this film. I genuinely think that he didn't need to be in this film, but for some reason we put him in because I don't know. We just want to cram as many superheroes as possible into films when they don't need to be. I don't get it. Anyways, but they find Odin, and Odin is like about to go. And that is when he drops the news that they have a sister named Hela. And Hela, she is what the kids might say a piece of work. She is the goddess of death, and she intends to rule the 9 realms in a very antagonistic way. Yeah. And so obviously when Thor and Loki are introduced to her after Odin dies, they get pretty hostile. And it ends up in a fight. Thor's hammer is broken, and Thor and Loki are stranded on this place called Sakaar. Now, this is Loki he gets there earlier somehow, and he very much is thriving there. He's at the Grandmaster, who he's at the Grandmaster. The Grandmaster is like the guy who runs Sakaar. He's at the Grandmaster's right hand. And Thor, he gets captured, of course, by Valkyrie, and he gets forced into a gladiatorial type competition with the Grandmaster's champion. And he is told that if he can defeat the champion, he can then leave. So he's like, okay, I'm gonna defeat this champion. Well, the champion turns out to be the Hulk, yes. Now, I don't mind that Bruce Banner is in this film. The Bruce Banner and the Hulk is in this film. Because I genuinely think that this film does the best of any film featuring Mark Ruffalo as Bruce Banner and the Hulk. It does the best at portraying a good, having a good portrayal of the Hulk and Bruce Banner, and sort of that intermingling, the relationship that Bruce has with the Hulk, and how that sort of intertwines. I think this film does that the best. So I kind of give it a pass for having the Hulk in this film, even though like, why is the Hulk in a Thor film? You know, I give it a pass, because I think it is the best portrayal of that character, of like, it's Mark Ruffalo's best portrayal of it. Okay. So he fights the Hulk, and it kind of ends up in a draw because Thor's about to beat him, and the Grandmaster doesn't want his champion to die. So it ends in a draw. And so then Thor is like, Thor escapes the Grandmaster's palace, and he's off to try and go get back home using the Quinjet. And while he's doing this, the Hulk, because also I should have mentioned this, Bruce has been stuck as the Hulk this entire time he's been here, since the end of Age of Ultron. So the um, Hulk goes to find Thor because he doesn't want him to leave, and in that process destroys the Quinjet, which was their exit strat, and then destroys the Quinjet, and then Mark Ruffalo, like, and then the Hulk becomes Bruce Banner again. And so then these two have to try and come up with a plan, and they recruit Valkyrie and Loki. And then they this plan to escape Sakaar. Loki tries to betray Thor again, but Thor sees it coming. And yeah. This film also, it really highlights the brotherly bond between Thor and Hulk, with this like sort of like Thor still seeing the best in Loki, but also like knowing who he is, and sort of the fact that like he can't really change that, change who he is as a trickster. And he sort of just like accepts his brother, and I think it's just like, it's really heartwarming, because like their relationship has always been very strained, and in this film, like Thor, like he softens to Loki, and Loki sort of trusts Thor for the first time. And I just think that it's really sweet, and part of the reason why I really like this film. Yeah. Okay, so they escape Sakaar, and they come back to battle Hela. And so there's also this development with Thor of like him thinking he sort of like needs the hammer to like be the god of thunder, but obviously he doesn't. And yeah, so he defeats his sister. They defeat his sister by unleashing Ragnarok on Asgard, and then the film ends with Thor becoming king, and them sort of sailing off to somewhere new to make the new Asgard. Yeah, so that is Thor Ragnarok. I gave this film 4.5 stars, and I said they finally embraced the fact that Thor is a himbo. Yeah, I think this film, I think this is one of the films where it's like the Marvel humor done right. Like, sometimes there are some films where like the Marvel humor is so layered on and it's hard to watch. And you're just like sitting there rolling your eyes every time there's like a Marvel joke. But I think this film, like, it has some really good comedic bits, and that is done really well. I also really like that this film, as I've said in the review, I really like that this film like embraces that idea of like Thor like not being the brain, not like leaning into that like silly himbo aesthetic. Like he very much like has that look of the himbo, and so like I appreciate that they lean into that. Anyways, the thing we talked about this when we were going plot summary, but I think the only thing I really dislike about this film is the fact that Doctor Strange isn't in it. He doesn't need to be, and yeah, he doesn't need to be. And I also think something that like lacks in this film is like a full sort of complete. It just I shouldn't say that this film doesn't have a complete story, like a complete arc, because we see Thor like embracing the fact that he is king and like taking on that responsibility, and we also see him sort of build his own little family after losing a lot of his family members. Yeah, I just think that like the fact that this film doesn't have like the other two films to build upon because they didn't do a good job setting it up, like I think that's also an area that this film lacks. But 4.5 stars for Thor Ragnarok. Let's move on to our final film of this video. All right, next up we are going to be talking about Black Panther. Black Panther. Yeah, let's get into it. So I think the sort of like arc of this film like heavily relies upon like how T'Challa is choosing to lead his nation. How he as a king is going to like help his people but also help the other people of the world, you know? So yeah, that's the arc we're going to be following. So this film, it starts with a flashback to T'Chaka, T'Challa's dad, like confronting his brother for black market dealing vibranium to Ulysses Claw. It starts with that, and that his brother ends up being the father. Like the brother ends up like T'Chaka ends up killing his brother, and his son ends up like feeling the fallout of that, and that is who our villain is. So that was our setup scene. Then we move into T'Challa going and getting his little boo thing, Nikita, from she is the first person I think that we get. Well, okay, she's technically the second person because I should talk. The first person that we have who is very firmly that Wakanda should start being better about outreaching to the troubled people across the world um, who are in like bad conditions and need to be saved and need aid, is T'Chaka's brother that he ends up killing, and he goes about this by like black market dealing vibranium to Caesar's Claw. Then we have Nikita. She goes about this via like she goes about this like through going undercover and helping women who are in sex trafficking. That's how like she goes about this. But she's the second person that we've met that has this opinion that Wakanda should be doing more for their neighbors. So, anyways, T'Challa picks up his girl, who's not really his girl anymore, and then we get his coronation. Another thing that like we sort of get introduced to as conflict is we realize that the Jabari tribe that M'Baku is the sort of leader of has sort of always been separated from the rest of Wakanda, and he like he just feels like the Jabari just feel very isolated, and so because of this, like when T'Challa has his little ceremony thing to become king, he is challenged by M'Baku for the throne. But T'Challa ends up winning, and so yeah. But that's all going to be important later. Then T'Challa's first act as king is to take down Ulysses' Claw. So they go to South Korea to try and take him down, and they are semi-successful because they are able to capture him. They capture him, and then I do not remember this guy's name, but it's the guy who plays Bilbo, Martin Freeman. It's Martin Freeman's character. Martin Freeman's character was also there while they were capturing Claw, because it was like a CIA or FBI. I don't know which one it was, but it was like the U.S. government was trying to get in on this capturing business. And so anyways, they capture him, and then Martin Freeman's character is sort of interrogating Claw, and he, like the rest of the world, I don't know how up to date y'all are at the Wakanda lore, but the rest of the world sees Wakanda as a very poor, impoverished country that refuses to take aid. However, that ain't the truth, because they're trying to hide the vibranium, because they're fearful of what the rest of the world would do for it. Which I think, okay, this is a little bit of a side tangent for a future episode, but I think it would have been a really interesting second Black Panther film, if they had dealt with the ramifications of like opening up Wakanda to the rest of the world, because spoiler alert, that happens at the end of this film. Anyways, so he alludes to Martin Freeman's character that Wakanda is not what they seem. Okay, anyways, then so he gets, what ends up happening during this like interrogation, our friend, what is the actor's name? Oh my gosh, Michael B. Jordan's character. I only know his supervillain name, Killmonger. Killmonger rescues Ulysses S. Claw out of jail, and basically the Wakandans are all upsetty spaghetti about it. And then Ulysses S. Claw, or not, Killmonger ends up betraying Claw and then killing him and bringing him in. And that is when we find out that he is the son of T'Chaka's brother, who T'Chaka killed for black market dealing weapons like vibranium to Claw. And so Killmonger wants to become king so that he can give the what is the word I'm looking for? The oppressed people of America and minorities. He wants to give them guns and give them weapons and stuff so that they can rise up. And obviously, T'Challa's like, but we're super secret, and that's kind of like the whole point. And Eric's like, well, what if we weren't? And this is the third person that we have who is really fighting for the borders to be opened and for the world to see this. Third person we've met who wants this. And so anyways, they battle, and Eric ends up winning, and it is seemed to think that T'Challa dies, but he doesn't die, because the Jabari rescue him, and they heal him. And so another thing is they get their Black Panther powers from this herb thing. And so like when they do this little magical battle thing for the throne, they take that away from you, so it's a fair fight. And so he doesn't have it when he seemingly died and ended up at the Jabari lair, but when our home slice Eric gets it after he gets the Black Panther stuff, he is like, so let's just burn it all down so no one else can be the Black Panther. Right before this happens, Lupita Nyong'o's character, I don't think I said that right. Don't blame me in the comments if I said that wrong. She grabs one of them, and so in the Jabari territory, they give T'Challa the powers back. And this is also, we see like the rectification between the Jabari tribe and the rest of the Wakandans, and sort of like T'Challa realizing that his father was not ruling a perfect country, and that there's a lot of things that like his father didn't do that that T'Challa sees as wrong, and that he wants to change as the ruler. I think like this is less like a character driven plot and more so like a political like type of a plot. That's like the best world I can come up with it, because it's like about how T'Challa realizes he wants like what type of a ruler he wants to be. That is the direction of which this plot goes, because he is hearing a lot of different people give their like he's cleaning up the messes that his father sort of left behind as king. Like his father killed his brother, and that is a mess. His father didn't do anything to heal the relationship with the Jabari. Like his father didn't capture Ulysses S. Claw. So like he's having to like clean up the messes, and through that he's deciding sort of like what ruler he wants to be. And so then we have the final battle between the two, which gets yoinked on a lot because it looks really bad. I do not expect, well, my cat's being loud. I do not expect a lot out of MCU visual effects, so that type of stuff is always just kind of like, okay, like I expect it to be bad almost, I don't go to a Marvel movie for pretty cinematography, although when a Marvel movie does have really pretty cinematography, it sticks out in my brain like so hardcore. I don't know if I revealed in any of these videos what my favorite Marvel movie is, but my favorite Marvel movie I think has really good cinematography. So anyways, so final battle, and obviously T'Challa ends up winning, and in the end he sort of like has this talk with his cousin, and he's sort of having this talk with his cousin as he's about to die. As they're looking at the sunset, T'Challa realizes like he wants to be a different king than his father, and that includes giving aid to the oppressed people of the world. And we end this film with him and Shuri going back to the place that their uncle was nephewed. Uncle was nephewed. I mean, uncle was murdered, and like deciding that they are going to make it into a aid, like a refugee aid spot. Anyways, that is Black Panther. I rated this film 4.5 stars. I think sometimes this film gets yoinked on for a lot of different things, but I think it's a really good film, and I really enjoy the like political ruling aspect of it. I think. I also kind of think, and maybe I'm gonna get flamed for this, but I like Killmonger as a villain. I think he really challenges and causes T'Challa to grow in a way that like is unconventional. Like T'Challa doesn't really disagree with what Killmonger wants to do, but he disagrees with the way that he wants to go about it, and I think that's really interesting. Yeah. My review was they thought they could sneak a Gollum and Bilbo reunion in there, and I wouldn't notice. For real, they thought they could do that, and yeah. Anyways, that is the first half of the MCU. The MCU Phase 3. That is part 1. Let's get into my little ranking. So here's what we got. We still have Thor Dark World at the bottom, but then we have Iron Man 2, Thor, Doctor Strange, pretty low. That's a notable thing. Then we have Incredible Hulk, Age of Ultron, Ant-Man 3. I have Spider-Man Homecoming right here. And then we have Black Panther and Thor Ragnarok, and then Guardians of the Galaxy, and then Volume 2, and then Captain America Civil War is at the top. She at the top. I really like that one. Okay, low-key, bad on my part. I didn't put in this presentation like the average rating. So I'm going to really quickly count that up. And so just like sit tight. Sit tight, and I'll be right back with the average. Okay, and we're back. So I really wanted to see like if like how phase 3 was doing like halfway through, but I forgot to put in the presentation. So it's a good thing I save on my presentations. So for phase 1, we had an average rating of 3.83. And then for phase 2, we had an average rating of 3.92. So obviously I like phase 2 better. The beginning half of phase 3 had an average rating of 4.333 repeating. So that is, to me, that is the one. She is shining. That the first half of phase 3 is shining, because I think like oftentimes we think of phase 3 as the Marvel Renaissance, because that was like when they were in their prime. So I really wanted to like investigate to see if that was really true. Anyways, don't look at this, don't look at this, don't look at this. Okay, anyways, y'all should follow me at Isidora on Letterboxd. I love Letterboxd. It's my favorite app. I don't have either of these on my phone anymore, but you should go follow me on TikTok and Instagram. I post on Instagram like semi-frequently, like every couple of months. And if I had more followers on TikTok, I would maybe post more. Unlikely, but you should follow me there. You should also check out, I'm going to put in the description box, my vlog channel. It's called Side Quest with Izzy. Just a fun little time. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Stay tuned for next week. We're not going to be talking about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but we're going to be doing that now on an every other basis, because we gotta get ready for Doomsday, and there's a lot of stuff that we have to catch up on, and a lot of shows. So yeah. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Like, subscribe, write a comment. I would appreciate it if you do that. Bye.